Hello everyone and welcome to this flipped classroom on decimal numbers. Now I thought we'd start with just a little glossary, just some of the key words and phrases that we come across when we're talking about number. So here's a list of 4. First one is place value. Now place value is simply the value of a digit because of its position. Now we're all familiar with the place value columns, our ones, tens, hundreds, thousands and so on. And today we'll focus on those to the right of the ones, the decimal numbers, the tenths, the hundredths, the thousands, and so on. But place value is simply the position of a digit. The digit itself are those 10 symbols we use to make all our numbers. The 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Those 10 symbols allow us to form any number we like. Partition. This is the word we use to divide a number into its parts. For example, 12 can be partitioned into a 10 and a 2. A very simple example, but partitioning is simply splitting a number up into its parts. And finally, placeholder. Sometimes we will use zeros when there is nothing for that particular value. So for example, the number 103 has 103 ones, but there are no tens. But the 0 is still very, very important. It allows us to realize that the 1 is actually in the hundreds column and not in the tenths column. Okay, so a placeholder is a 0 that has no value, but is important because it forces other numbers into the correct columns. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, here we have our place value grid. Now these are the integers, these are our whole numbers, and play the grid that we're most familiar with. Starting at the right hand side with the ones, tens and hundreds, then the thousands, so 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, then the millions, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, and so on. Now I'm going to put up a second place value columns. Can you spot what's the same and what's different? Okay, just give you a moment. Now, first of all, you should be able to see that the units, the ones, tens, and hundreds, and then the thousands, the 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, are both evident in both. The difference is what's going on down here at the right side, because we have these dots. These are our decimal points, and anything to the right of this is less than a whole. So there's our whole one, there's our ones. And if we move to the right, these are fractions of that whole. So the first column after the decimal point are tenths. So our 1 has been split up into 10 equal parts to give us tenths. Then our tenths are split up into 10 to give us hundredths. Then hundredths are split into 10 to give thousands. Okay, but each of these columns, and they carry on, we have 10,000, 100,000, and so on. But each of these columns is less than a whole. Now, here we have some counters on our place value grid. Can you tell me what number's being represented? Hopefully you'll have identified that there's 100, 2 tens, and 4 ones. So that gives us 124. But there's also a counter over here in the hundredths column. So how would we write this number? Well, hopefully you realize it's 124. So there's our whole numbers. So that's the whole part. Then we've got the point, which you can see here on our place value chart. There are no tenths, but the 0 is really important because without it, this 1 will be in the tenths column. So we need the 0 to sort of push the 1 out into the hundredths column. So 124.01. Okay, there are no tenths, so we put the 0 in there. Now, what do you think is the mistake that people make there? And you need to be careful not to do the same. Well, the mistake, as I mentioned, is this 0. People see the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 1, and they write 124.1 and they forget all about this empty column. But it's really important. Okay, so just be careful with your zeros. What about this one? Okay, again, think about which column the counters are in. You've got 100, no tens, we'll come back to that, 3 ones, 2 tenths, no hundredths, and 1,000. So what would that look like as a number? There we go, 100, no tens, and 3 ones, so 103. You can see the 0 is important. Okay, and then 2 tenths, no hundredths, and 1,000. So after our decimal point, 2 tenths, no hundredths, and 1,000, 103.201. We're asking there, why is the 0 important when representing a decimal or any number for that matter? You can see the zeros in this number are really important. The 0 here pushes the 1 into the hundreds column, which is where it should be. Otherwise, we'd have 13.201, which obviously is incorrect. And the 0 here in the hundredths column is pushing the 1 into the thousandths column to where it should be. Otherwise, it would read 0.21, which obviously is incorrect. So the zeros are really, really important. Do pay attention to them. Now, we can also represent numbers by partitioning them. So here we've got 1 in the hundreds column, 3 ones, 2 tenths, and 1,000th. So there we have 100, 3 ones, 2 tenths, and 1,000th. And all together, we've got 103.201. Okay. And again, placeholders, really, really important, because otherwise this 0.001 without those zeros would be 1, which is clearly wrong. Okay. What values are missing in this calculation? So our whole is 11.321. There's our 10. What's missing in this space? What's missing in this space? Well, the 10 is that first one, the one in the tens column. There is 1 in the units column, or in the ones column, I should say. So 1 in the ones column. So there's a missing 1. There's our 3 tenths, our 0.3. So it's this 2. What column is that in? Well, it's the 2 hundredths. So it would be 0.02. And then the 1,000th there at the end. What about this one? Now we're going into 2000s. So we've got our 2000. And next column is our gap. So you can see it's 100. So we're missing a 100 from there. There's our 3 tenths. We're missing 1, 1, which will go in this space here. 4 tenths. No hundredths. And then 1,000. So this final space will be 0.001. Okay. Right. One's for you to try. In each of these numbers, there is a digit 9. You can see a 9 there, 9 there, 9 there, and so on. But what is the value of the 9? Place value chart is there if you need it, just to help you along. Okay, let's have a look at the first one. What's the value of the 9 there? Hopefully you realize it is hundredths. So 9 hundredths or 0.09. What about number 2? Number 2 is 900. Notice the difference. Hundredths is our decimal. 100 is our whole number. And there's a big difference between the two, so don't confuse them. Number 3 is 9 tens or 90. Number 4 is 9 tenths, 0.9. Again, notice the spelling difference and the sound difference between tens and tenths. And then number 5 is 9 thousandths or 0.009. Okay. So how is the same digit worth different values? Simple, because it's in a different position in its place value. Okay, so we just use those 10 digits 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But by placing them in different columns, they have different values. Okay, so that's how our number system and our decimal number system works. Okay, so just a reminder of the glossary. Place value is the value of the digit because of its position. So exactly where it is in that place value column. Even if the headings aren't there, it's still because of its position in a number. The digit are those 10 symbols we use to represent all our numbers. Partition is to split up a number into its parts. And the placeholder is that 0 where it's holding something in place to force other numbers into their correct columns, to their correct values. So a 0 can be very, very important in the size of a number. Okay, hope that was clear. So take care, and we'll see you all soon.